Some of you may have expected Mech Warrior 2, and while it is a fine mech combat game, that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about a different kind of game with big bots. Gigantic towering machines roaming the earth and destroying all in their wake. These are the Xenobots, Ultrabots. This game was released in the year 1993 by Novalogic, and for some reason it has two names. The original version is called Ultrabots in the US, and in Europe it's called Xenobots. And everything in the game is referred to as a Xenobot, which sounds more alienish, but it's not as strong, not as powerful, not as intimidating as an Ultrabot. Why the change? Probably something to do with some IP someone registered in Europe, and that's why they couldn't call it Ultrabots. The version I played when I was a kid was Ultrabots, and it was the first gigantic robot, mech game I ever played. And it became the standard by which I judged other mech combat games. Not that this was the greatest, oh god no, but it had the right feeling to it. It may not seem like something important to most people that are in it for the gameplay, for the mechanics of it, but the feeling is important. When you stepped into the cockpit of an Ultrabot, you were there. You could feel you were there. You could move your mouse onto any of the screens and they worked. You would click on them, they would show you something else, something that was actually usable in game. You could move your throttle. You could click on all the buttons and they did something. And honestly, I can't say the same thing about any game out there today. Sure, piloting the mech with just a mouse was kinda slow, tedious, not the best way possible to actually do it, but it was functional, and just being able to see everything move and everything light up and everything show you information that was actually useful, not some visual effect they added like in MechWarrior Online, where they used to have monitors that showed nothing apart from a potential kill score, and then they changed most of them to glowy things that showed nothing. All the things in the cockpit were there because they had to be there to give you all the feedback you needed to crush your opponents. And boy, did you have a lot of opponents to crush. The basic idea of the game is that we finally made contact with an alien race. A gigantic ship swept past the Earth and left us presents in the form of man-killing gigantic robots that terrorized the planet. They were defeated, but being alien gigantic robots, they were defeated using nuclear weapons, something that sort of left the Earth uninhabitable at the surface for the most part, which was all fine and dandy for the aliens because their ship was making its way around the sun and coming back for round 2. But this time, we had a weapon. We would use their own technology against them. We would use the Ultrabots to fight them on their own terms with their own tactics. And that's what he did through 13 missions spread across the globe in a campaign that I never actually finished because goddamn did it become hard and a bit tedious. Something you have to understand is that this is a mech warrior, not in any way, shape or form. Ultrabots is basically its own thing. Honestly, the closest comparison I would have to it would sort of be the Space Hulk game, but if it were with mechs in an open environment and with a power management component. There's basically no aiming involved in this game. You plug onto a target and the computer on board will take care of actually getting the weapons to fire at what it's supposed to hit. Apart from the cannons, those are actually direct fire and you have to sort of aim them, but you can't hit individual components on purpose. You have to just aim at them and hope you hit something useful. Which is kind of a shame because this game has regional damage. You will routinely see robots without an arm running away, and that bit of them will be damaged. Like all those things you see in the cockpit, the terminals, the vision, the map screen, the weapon systems, they can be damaged. They can be taken offline, and you lose functionality in your machine. And they can also be repaired passively, or you can just go back to the base with them. Ah yes, the base. So let's take a step backwards. What's the idea? Well, you start off with a couple of mechs and a base in every mission. And around you will be dotted a couple of relays, power relays. It sort of takes the idea of these mechs need constant power, but we won't plug them in like morons like, you know, Neon Genesis Evangelion. We'll use wireless energy distribution. After all, you can charge a phone wireless, why can't you charge a mech? So you have these relays that supply you with constant power, and if you're outside your network, you will have to rely on the internal battery. And boy, when you're shooting plasma bolts at enemies, yeah, that thing goes down like no one's business. But you can build that network up using the mech that looks like a scorpion. The other mechs don't have the ability to build a net, they just use it. The scout doesn't need it as much because it has a bigger battery and can just run around scouting out things and placing mines, placing decoys, placing alarms even, and then run away because it can't really deal with a head-on fight with the other mech, which is the humanoid one, the main warrior. This thing is big, armored, has the plasma bolt, a seeker missile, some ECM, and a cloak that lets it sort of disappear behind a puff of metal and stuff. That thing hides you from radar, it breaks the lock of missiles, it's basically there to help you retreat. There's a component of informational warfare to it that just isn't in Mech Warrior. And the first one, but there's no ECM combat in the first one at all, and there actually isn't that much in all of them, at least not as much as this game has. There's just 3 mechs, but they're sufficiently different that it compensates for the fact that there's just 3 of them. And unlike Mech Warrior, you don't control one of them. You control all of them or none. When you're not controlling a mech, you can set it to either stand still and do nothing, or you can engage the, I wouldn't say autopilot because they all are piloted by someone. And you can tell them to engage. They'll seek out and destroy anything near them. You can tell them to patrol, you can tell them to go after a unit, to chase someone down, to stand still, hold the line, or just run back to base and get your arms repaired, you dumbass. I wouldn't actually recommend using the auto command all that much because they don't do well with pathing. They don't seem to understand that the relays, the things that give them energy, are in their way and will constantly slam against them and break their systems. You'll go into battle and see that your humanoid robot, your Xenobot, doesn't have thermals anymore, and it's night and you can't see anything. And you wonder, why did you do that? And then you look down and see, oh, you've been slamming into this relay for the past half hour while I was on the other side of the map doing other stuff. Though to be fair, you do hear the impact and you do get a pop-up in the comms in the command window with the stuff that's going on. You can't play it like a mech commander, you can't really give them sufficient orders through the command map, so you constantly have to be in the driver's seat or near it, but it gives a different kind of feeling to it than something like MechWarrior does. And there's something else too. I'm not entirely sure how to describe this. Each match has a feeling to it. Each map, even though it's basically the same thing, 2 bases, maybe a hill to one side, they all feel different depending on how it plays out. Some of them may just start out with the enemy attacking you, rushing you, giving you no time to set up proper defenses with mines, with alarm buoys, with counter ECM decoys or something. And some of them are a bit slower because the bases are very far apart and you have to go and actually do scouting, see how many enemies there are, and either you go after them and risk running without power for some time and maybe actually losing your mechs, or you can just wait in your own base for them to attack first and hope that you can repel them and then launch a counterattack and destroy their base. There's a sort of a feeling of, well, I wouldn't say dread, but anticipation when you start seeing one of their scout mechs just inching its way through your net, when one of your alarm buoys just goes off, when a mine suddenly explodes. You know they're coming, and it's the kind of feeling you don't usually get in games like this. Apart from, and this is probably the only exception, Mech Warrior Online's community warfare maps. You just sit in your base and wait for the enemy to come to you. You have to guess, where are they going to come from? Left, right, middle? We'll send out a scout to see where they're at. We'll hope that we use the correct tactics to defend ourselves, push them back, not get clobbered, and then wait for the next time they come. Only here you're not dealing with other players that may not understand the thinness of tactics or communication, and you just rely on yourself, on your abilities to command all these mechs and sometimes the AI as well. There is, however, one thing that may be useful to know if you're gonna play this game. The most powerful mech in terms of firepower, like actual destructive capability, is not the humanoid, it's the Scorpion, because the Scorpion has 6 missiles on board. They cannot be replenished, they cannot be restocked. You have 6 for the entire mission. One of them will destroy any other mech. I actually believe that in the manual it said that it had a blast radius of half a kilometer, so there may be a chance you can actually get 2 of them if they're actually close to each other and have to almost make contact. But in general, I basically saved those missiles for the enemy base because, well, apart from being difficult after a point, it becomes tedious. You have to, even if you destroy all the enemy mechs, you have to slowly inch your way with the net towards the enemy base and hit it with everything you've got. Because if you don't make a net close enough to the enemy base, you may find yourself that you're out of power and your mechs can't move anymore. They can't do anything, just sit there. And you have to build that net closer to them so they'll have enough power. It becomes a bit slow, a bit boring. Though I believe you can actually steal their... No, yeah, you can steal their relays. You can load them up in your own Scorpion, and if you distribute enough power to your own network, you can get them to flip to your side. Power, by the way, affects the actual power in the network, how far it extends. The power can also be diverted to building more relays and to repairing your mechs. Subsystems like visuals, maps can be repaired on site by the pilot himself, but weapons, no, those need actual mechanics in the base. All in all, Ultrabots is not a very deep game. You don't go gallivanting around the universe like in MechWarrior. You have just those 13 maps scattered around the globe that do have different conditions. Like some of them are at night, so you do have to use thermal vision to see your enemy, though locking onto them is done by, radar, so you don't necessarily have to see them to shoot them, but it's easier to know they're there if you see them, to know where they're coming from, to know what you can do. Even though it's kind of simpler in many ways, the combat is a bit better than it is in MechWarrior 1. You can do fine aim, but you will hit individual components. You basically have a much smoother experience when it comes to combat. Matches are not done in 2 minutes. They can last up to an hour even, depending on how well you play or don't play or what your resistance to waiting out the enemy is. And it has, again, that sense of immersion, that you're in that cockpit, that you are piloting that giant robot. Being able to move all those dials, that throttle, all those things makes it feel so real. And you can tell it's made by people that previously worked on simulators. Novalogic before this made Comanche, which was a simulator for helicopters, though Dynamics also worked on flight simulators too. And Novalogic went on to create more flight simulators. So it's a sort of a thing that companies that made flight sims, mech sims, also somehow wound up making great first-person shooters. Dynamics made Tribes, and Novalogic made the Delta 4 series. It's in their DNA to make very good experiences like this. Ultrabots is not available anywhere for purchase. You can probably find it on some old sites about abandonware, either as Xenobots or as Ultrabots. It's a nice game to get to know, at least for the first level or two. At least for the feeling and for the informational combat that can be accomplished in this game. Now, you won't necessarily actually engage in a lot of informational combat with ECM buoys and all sorts of stuff. You're mainly just gonna crush the enemy, but it's a nice feature that can have its uses. I'm kinda sad that they never made a sequel to it. Hey, THQ Nordic, you own Novalogic now, right? Get them to make an Ultrabots, so hey, put it on Kickstarter even. There's probably 5 other people that played Ultrabots 1 and would gladly support it. Maybe. I mean, we do have MechWarrior 5 coming soon, so... but still, maybe. Thank you for watching this show. If you enjoyed it, please consider watching some of our other videos and maybe sharing them or giving a thumbs up if you feel like it. And if you really liked what you saw, please check out our Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you could help us make much better shows and get some rewards in the process. Or you could consider buying my book called Tale of Doom. Volume 1 is out now and available for just $2. And as always, if you thought it was horrible, you know where to find me and complain about it.